let's talk about this wall. Like I said, I saw it on TikTok and it blew my mind. And then we got to talking. What you actually, I asked a question. Where does your 11-year-old daughter come up with the idea for this? I think it's great that she has this. She's obviously, listening. She's paying attention to what's going on in the world, cares to say something about it. But how does it get this big? I don't know if it gets necessarily this big for kids. So I think that's really cool.
So 3 years ago, I bought a 6-foot tall dinosaur for Halloween, and it didn't go with any of my Halloween aesthetic, but I bought it because I think it's awesome to have a 6-foot tall T-Rex skeleton. Then I was trying to find out. Then Halloween was over, and I was like, where am I going to put this thing? And I have these big bushes in the back that face that on my fence line. Now my fence faces a roadway. There's not like a lot of people for some reason get confused and they think that my fence borders someone else's yard, but it's just like the main entrance. Like I wouldn't even call it our neighborhood. It's just a cut through road that neighborhoods are off of. So it's multiple neighborhoods, and this is just the path to get to them. And that's what my fence faces. So I was like, I'll just tuck it in to these shrubs. And maybe a kid driving by with his mom will see it and be like, that's awesome. You know what I mean? It was just a way to store a Halloween decoration really I had no place for. But then a running group that would run like 5Ks and 10Ks, and this was on their route, it became like a stopping point for them to take selfies with. And one of my neighbors came up and was like, hey, just so you know, there's this running group. And every morning, in case anyone's like up early in the morning, because I don't understand running at all. It makes no sense to me, but they go running at like 5 in the morning. And they were like, just so you know, if you're ever like looking at your window and there's like a group of people, we take pictures. It's like a point of the run is to stop and take a picture with the dinosaur. And me and my wife go on Facebook and we're like, oh my God, there's hundreds of pictures of this dinosaur. So we're like, oh, I guess it's gonna stay up. So then it's just a thing that runners take pictures of, and kind of creepy because my bathroom window faces that. So I'd go like to the bathroom early in the morning and I'd literally see like 10 people just standing at my fence line. I'm like, oh, that's creepy. But so then they're doing their thing with this dinosaur, and then COVID starts, and yeah, all right. So there was a kid whose mom was in the running group whose birthday was coming up. And she was looking for like dinosaur themes. She's like, oh, my son's got a dinosaur. He loves dinosaurs. And my wife was like, oh, we'll put like birthdays on the dinosaur and we'll go out and write on chalk. We write the kid's name on it. And then other people came and just wrote happy birthday wishes to this kid for their birthday. And we're like, oh, that was kind of cool. So then my daughter was like, oh, we should write like something else. So then we wrote like, what makes you happy in chalk? And then we just leave chalk out there. And next thing we know, like over the next 2 days, the whole fence is filled with just responses to the question. And we're like, that's really cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but obviously it's chalk. So, it rains and then it gets weird looking. So my wife goes out so my wife would go out and hose it off. And then my daughter would be like, well, let's ask another question. And we're like, okay, well, let's ask another question. So it was like, what do you miss most? And then we left chalk out there and people just wrote messages all over it. Like the neighborhood really liked it at that point. They were all in. Like it was just a pretty big deal. And then with my daughter, now people will be like, oh, you're an awful person, but we don't like shy away from things that are happening in the world. I
think you should. I think honesty is huge for kids. I think it's essential. I think same as with marriages, people need to communicate with their kids more. But
yeah,
go ahead.
So I have a son as well. He's 14. My daughter is 11 now, but she was 10 when it started. And we've always made it a point since they were born to literally sit down and eat dinner every single night. Never missed a night. It's what we do. Unless there's a baseball game. I can't say never miss a night. Now that they're older and there's baseball and soccer and swim team, there's a couple nights, but 5 out of 7 nights we sit down for 45 minutes, eat dinner, and talk. And we talk about what's going on in the world. Like we don't shy away from subjects. And sometimes we get in heated, opinionated arguments about what's going on in the world, but we let them state their opinion and have their opinion. We don't force our opinions on each other. You know what I mean? We just listen to each other. We will get in arguments, but but we don't force each other.
That's opinions. Okay. That's yeah.
So my daughter's always been has always been, I don't know if underdog's the right word. She's always had fight in her for, the person, like she's always been the type of kid where if someone was getting bullied, she'd have no problem walking up to the bully and being like, the hell you do that? Like
Yeah.
very open about it, which is interesting because 99% of the time she's very subdued and a very quiet, shy little girl. But when she sees something wrong, she gets this lioness fight in her to end it. So she was seeing on the news what was going on after George Floyd, and she was asking us about it. And it was time to, wash the fence off and put a new prompt. And she said, could we do a Black Lives Matter prompt? And we we're like, yeah, absolutely. And like I said, these prompts, they would stay up for a week, maybe 2 weeks, depending on the weather. It really depended on the rain. The second they got rained on, we'd hose it off and let the fence dry and start over again. So we thought, yeah, we'll do that for a week or two. And we wanted to do Pride. My daughter also wanted to do Pride, and Pride was coming up in June. And she was excited about that. So we just thought we'd put it up, and then we keep it up for 2 weeks until Pride, and then we do a Pride prompt. So we wrote Black Lives Matter in chalk, and we left the chalk out there. And within a few hours, neighbor comes knocking on my door. How dare you make me look at this on my way home? And we were like, what? Like, it's been up for 2 months. What are you talking about? And I was absolutely because the message was Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm a bit of an a-hole. And I was like, you know what? My buddy owns a print shop. I'm gonna go print up a poster. Double down a little bit. So I printed up a poster, and I just stapled it to the fence. And people were writing positive messages, but people were also writing awful messages. For every positive message, there was an equal terrible message and then the big debate was, do we erase the bad messages or do we keep them? And then it was like, well, we drew the line at curse words. So if the curse word went on there, we'd wipe it off. But anything else, we were like, let people talk. I mean, that's the whole point of it. And that was my daughter's
stance. That's the whole point of it. Sure.
That was my daughter's stance. She says all she wanted to do was just maybe when a car drove by, a kid would ask what that was and what it meant, and there would be a conversation. That was her hope. One conversation. That was all she wanted to do. Inform one person. So that was going for a couple weeks, like a week or so, and then someone stole the poster. And then I didn't know what to do to tell my daughter, like, someone stole the poster, and she was getting really upset. Like, why do people hate us? And I'm like, well, they don't hate us. They just hate the message. And she's like, I don't get it. And she was really confused by it. And I was like, it was like a weird moment because as an adult, you have conversations away from the kids. And it's like, well, we're getting a lot of pressure. A lot of people hate us right now. This guy stole the poster, and we could just move on if we wanted to. Like, we could just wash the fence and move on to Pride Month. And then we talked it out as a family. And then it was like, well, Black people can't just wash off their skin. So this is an inconvenience for us. And we can walk away whenever we want. But I think the message is powerful. And I think the hate we're getting says a lot about the people who still need to have the conversation. So the decision was made to put the posters back up and keep moving on with the message. And we would clean it off, but we'd write Black Lives Matter, and we had vinyl posters up. Well, about 2 days after I put up the new vinyl posters, they got ripped down and stolen again. I was like, are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. So I call the police every time they're stolen. The police are like, there's nothing you can do unless you have video of them stealing it.
Sure.
And I'm, well, great. That's going to cost me $100 to put a camera out there and the whole deal. I'm like, really don't want to do that, but I don't know. So they got stolen. I called the police, filed a police report. And then my buddy had the print shop. So I'd print them up in like 45 minutes. So I'd wake up, I'd go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. They'd be up. I'd wake up at 7, they're gone. And I'd have new ones up by 8 a.m. because I thought that was the biggest, like, oh, you're going to steal my shit. Well, you're going to think you got it. But then when you wake up in the morning to drive to work, that poster you stole from me is already going to be back up on the fence. And I thought that was the biggest, like, piss off to them. Because imagine how frustrated you'd be if you No matter how many times you
Yeah.
stole it, it was instantly back up. So I put them back up, and then they got stolen again 2 days later. So I put them back up within an hour of me waking up. And this time I put them up with plexiglass. Now, I've never messed with plexiglass before, but I like, put some glue on it, boom, and I bolt it down, and I don't know. I'm just like slapping things on it, trying to make it more difficult. And I put up a Ring camera. Then I'm at my son's baseball game, which is right up the road. And my neighbor calls me and goes, "Your signs are in the street." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? It's 6:30 at night, sun up." So I run back home. Right, the game just started. It was such a pain because I really wanted to watch my son's game, but I wasn't going to allow all this stuff to happen. So I come home. I call the police. My wife's at the ball field going through the Ring footage to see if she gets it. She texts me and she's like, "We got it." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" And she's sending me over to it. And I'm like, clear as day. Now, the whole time I thought it was maybe 2 people who were stealing them, because they were the 2 people who would scream terrible things at my daughter, me, my wife, every time they drove by.
Wow.
Like, I couldn't repeat the things that they said to my 10-year-old daughter and to me and to my wife. Anytime we were outside, like on that side of the fence, like cleaning it or anything, I have no problem screaming. So I was like, I think it's these 2 people. And they were a father and son. I was like, I feel like it's these 2 people. And then we get the video. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's that guy. And I call the police, and the police come and they fingerprint. I'm like, good for them. Like,
Yeah.
they're really doing their job here.
Yeah.
And I show them the video. And they're like, "Well, do you know his name?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Well, unless you know his name." And I'm so angry at this point because they're like, "We can't do anything unless you have it on video." Then I get it on video, and they're like, "Well, we can't do anything unless you know his name." And I'm like, do I have to do all the police work here? Like, honestly. So one of my neighbors was walking by.
So if I get mugged, do I have to know the name of the guy that mugged me?
Exactly.
I need to ask that before they go, "Hey, thanks for mugging me. Can I get your name real quick in case I can figure out
Can I
who
get
you
a
are?"
copy of your photo ID?
It's like,
Mother's maiden name, please?
yeah.
But my neighbor's walking her dog, and she comes by. And I'm like, "Do you know who this is?" And she goes, "Yeah, I know who that is." And I'm like, "Really? You know his first name and last name?" And she's like, "Yeah, I know his address, actually, because he lives on my road." And I'm like, I like this. So she goes and talks to the police. And they're like, "All right, cool. We got him. And we have him ID'd. We have a video of him doing it. We got him." And I'm like, yes, thank God. And the news picks it up. Well, first we posted, because while we're trying to figure out who it is, my wife posted on the Sheldon thing. And it's like, does anyone know who this is? And then that got a lot of traction. I got like 8,000 views for Facebook that had like, I think 70 followers at the time. We're like, oh my God, 8,000 views, good for us. Now, the news did cover it initially when it was just Black Lives Matter, and it was like, a dinosaur out in Short Pump, Virginia is spreading the message of love. We're like, oh, that's cool. And then they came back after it got stolen. And they're covering it. And I'm like, we're getting a lot of like weird pressure on the fence. But my daughter's still like, no, we push, we keep going because this is what it's about. And I'm like, all right, I'll do whatever you tell me to do, sweetheart. But when you tell me to pull the plug, the plug's pulled. So just keep that in mind. And she's like, no, we caught the guy and he's going to go to court and the court is going to do the right thing. And that was her stance. And you can't look a 10-year-old in the eye and be like, I hope it doesn't. Like, I hope right? No. What it needs to do for you. Because what lesson does it teach a 10-year-old when it doesn't work? You know what I mean? Because this is what she's taught her whole life is bad people do bad things and they get in trouble and they pay a consequence for their bad actions. And that's the way the world works.
Well, it kind of teaches the lesson that you're putting up on your fence in some respects.
Yeah. So it's up, but I think the media attention let a lot of people know that I had cameras. So it doesn't really get messed with much for a long time. It's just the message stays up, the posters stay up, the world's spinning. Everything's going really good. So this happened in June of 2020 where he got caught. His court case was in November. So we were just letting the world coast along. And because of COVID, I'm the only one who can go into court because I'm the one who filed the charges. And the judge, it's so terrible because I'm watching this judge, because the case is in front of my cases, you know, you could, court's at 9, but there's like 15 people ahead of your case. So you sit there for and it's like person after person with like really, and obviously it's all misdemeanor court at this point because the value is only $160. It's all misdemeanor stuff. And the judge is just sentencing some of these kids to like weeks in jail. Lots of like really harsh punishments for like, I'm talking like petty theft, $20. Like literally like spray painting a dumpster. The kid got like 60 hours community service and like a $2,500 fine. And I'm like, all right, good. This judge is really laying down the law. Then this guy comes up and he pleads guilty. He says, yeah, it was me. But he pleads, I forget the wording, but essentially it was, but I've never been in criminal court before. And I'm X amount of years old. And yes, I did it, but it's a misdemeanor. I've never been in court before. And the judge is just like, all right, well, we'll give you 6 months, pay restitution, $160. And as long as you don't get in trouble for the next 6 months, we'll just take it off your record. And I was like, really? So he goes into court and says, yeah, I did it. Doesn't apologize, just, yes, I did it. And the judge is just like, oh, good for you. Just don't get in any trouble for the next 6 months. And now the judge, because we had a restraining order against him at this point, and the judge took away the restraining order and did a court-ordered no contact, which means he can't have contact with me. But with a restraining order, he can't have contact with me. But if he breaks that restraining order, it's criminal. So if he was to come on my property or say something to me with a restraining order, I call the police come, they arrest him. The judge removed that and did a no contact, which means I have to get him on video of contacting me, coming on my property, giving me the middle finger, screaming profanity at me. I have to get him on video, and then I have to go to court, present that as evidence to a judge, and then the judge would make a determination of whether he breached his no contact. But if I call the police will say, well, there's nothing you can do. You can only take this footage to the court, which I thought was really effed up. So then I had to go home and tell my 10-year-old daughter, she was still 10 at the time, that he only has to pay us the money for ripping the posters. And we don't have a restraining order anymore. And I'm like, what the hell kind of world do we live in where a grown man can behave like a child, but gets this weird pass because he's a grown man? Makes no sense. So we're conflicted as a family, like we're angry. And we're like, geez, like the amount, like this is like a prime example. Like what a teaching moment of like, I'm not comparing myself to anything Black people in America have to go through by any stretch of the imagination. But the lesson of my daughter, the small glimpse she got over the course of that 8 months, she was like, this is screwed up. And we're like, yeah. Now, when the poster got ripped, an artist reached out to us and he's like, if you ever want, I'll paint a mural on your fence free of charge. And we're like, really? And he's like, absolutely. And we were back and forth about it because we felt like that was stepping it up a bit. But then we got this court case result and we're just like, this guy, so frustrating. We were really angry, but we kept chugging along. Poster's still up. That's when me and my wife laid in bed and we're just like, let's just go. Let's just do it. Because the stance was Black from my daughter and my wife is, we can wipe it off whenever we want, but Black people can't change the color of their skin. So if we have to be really uncomfortable for a while, then we're going to be really uncomfortable to keep the message going. Because the other thing, in my opinion, and this is an opinion that a lot of people might take anger with. It's back in May and June and July. There was a lot of motion, a lot of conversations, especially in the city of Richmond where we're at. Monuments coming down, lots of symbolism, lots of protests in the street. But like I said, I'm not old, but I've seen, I remember the Rodney King riots. I remember these things, and it just we as Americans, we get really passionate for a very short amount of times. And we'll be so passionate. But then a couple weeks go by, months go by, we don't care anymore. We move on to the next thing. And I think that that's why we never solve a problem as a country. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we don't get things solved because we get really passionate and then a butterfly flies by. So my stance to teach my daughter that when she decided to fight this fight, it wasn't going to be a fight that she fought. It was going to be a fight that she's going to fight. We were going to keep fighting the fight. And she was all about it. Super passionate, spitfire of a girl. So we decided, we're like, screw it. Let's go permanent on the fence, because if the county's not going to do anything about it, and it's going to make people extract this much emotion from people, then we need to go big. Because if the system doesn't work for you, then you need to work the system. And to me, it was, this guy got away with it, essentially. I understand he didn't get away with it, but he got away with it. My wife was go permanent. I was go big. My daughter was go passion. And these were the three stirring pots of this mural. So we called the guy who volunteered to do the mural. And he comes over, he walks the fence, and he's like, how big do you want it? And we're like, you got the whole fence. It's 100 feet long. Go as big as you want. And he's like, all right. And he showed us some of his stuff.
End to end, go.
He showed us some of his stuff, and he's like, what's the end goal? And we were like, to keep people talking, to keep the conversation moving. But then on the flip side, my being an a-hole was, and if the system doesn't work for you, work the system, was I want it so big, and I want it to be an all-inclusive piece. So you couldn't say that this section's different from this section. This is all one solid piece of art that's valued at a dollar amount that makes it a class 1 felony. Because the state won't turn away from a class 1 felony. They can't shush that under the rug like they can a misdemeanor. It would be a serious crime if someone defaced it in any way. And that was my input in it. I wasn't trying to egg anyone on to deface it, but I just wanted that level of protection for my daughter's passion to have that if someone messes with your fence, it's not going to be something the county or the state can walk away from and be like, no big deal. Just because in court, even the prosecuting attorney was like, it was a political sign. That's what they kept referring to as my Black Lives Matter posters that were ripped down. He removed a political sign. And I'm like, no, he didn't remove a political sign. He destroyed my property.
Well, it doesn't matter what he removed.
And it's not political.
It's on your property. He trespassed, and that should have been the thing if you'd had it. Yeah. So, So I think you're right. I don't think you're trying to egg anybody on by making it, setting it up to be a felony, because I think exactly what you said. You're making the system work for you. You're working the system to work for you.
It's an added level. It's an added level of protection. So, and my daughter wanted RGB in there. I wanted RGB in there. My wife wanted RGB in there. We wanted to represent a little LGBTQ, which we decided to do with flags. We wanted the Skittles as a symbolism for Trayvon Martin, who started, when he was murdered by George Zimmerman. That started the Black Lives Matter hashtag, and we just wanted it to be. We just wanted it to provoke a reaction, and that's all we told the artist. And then he came back with this. The artist was like, I'm not gonna tell anyone what I'm working on, and we're like, cool. And we didn't mention it to any of the neighbors, none of them. Kept the posters up and all the messages, because after we got ripped down and stolen, neighbors showed up with their own art, and we'd laminate it and hang it on the fence and stuff like that. And we've kept all that art.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So we have all that, but we've had it down at a section of the fence, and we upgraded the camera system to record. So it's not a Ring camera. It does 24-hour recording, and it stores the recording so we can go look at it whenever we want. And then he came and he did the fence, and we were on edge, because we thought the second paint hit the fence, we were taking bets in between each other, like how long until the cops show up. Like, but uninterrupted.
Till the cops
Like,
show up. What are you guys doing? Like,
uninterrupted, we put the fence up. I was like, that's pretty amazing. But then that night on Facebook and Nextdoor and any app that my neighbors use, there was just, how do we get them to take it down? These people are awful people. I saw him out power washing. He was installing new cameras. Like they're like literally like writing down, tracking me. He was out mowing the grass out there. I knew he was up to something 2 weeks ago because I saw him spreading fertilizer. And I'm like, oh, do they just watch me every time I go out there? Believe it or not, I'm surprised. The Facebook group took down their things, and Nextdoor removed the people who were talking stuff. And I was pretty surprised by that. I was like, good for them. Good for them doing their job. And then I posted on TikTok with the video of the guy ripping the poster down. And it was like, you do this, we do this. And that got a lot of traction. I didn't expect it to get the traction it got. I went to bed, it had like 25 views.
That's the first one I saw.
I was like, oh, 25 views, that's not too much. So I posted the fence, and I would post at 7:45 every night. I don't know why, but that was the time I'd hit send. So I posted the fence, and then I'd check it where it was when I'd go to bed at about 9:30, 10. And I checked it at like 9:30, and it had like 25 views. And I was like, oh, what a dud of a TikTok. That sucks. Because I was like, this is a pretty good TikTok. This is a good one. And I got 25 views. And when I went to bed, I was like, no, that sucks. I thought more people would see it, because that was the idea. Is my daughter was like, let's make it beautiful. Let's make it big. And let's have as many people in the world see it as possible. And I was like, oh, TikTok's the way to do this. And I posted, I got 25 views. And I was like, oh, well, that sucks. I went to bed. I woke up at like 5 in the morning because I'm old and I have to pee at least once a night. And I checked my phone, and it was at 600,000 views. And I was like, holy crap, that's a lot of views in the last few hours. And I went to the bathroom, and I went to wake my wife up and say, look, I got like 600,000 views. And then it was removed for a community guideline violation for hate speech. And I was like, how did you talk in it? It had a song to it. I was like, that sucks. I appealed it. And I thought I was going to get kicked off TikTok the way these people complain. I was like, oh my God, a community violation. It's all over. But they put it back up, but it took them like 2 days to put it back up. And I thought it would have lost all of its momentum by then. But then in that first day where it was up for 24 hours, it got like 3 million views. That's amazing. But the guy who has zero contact still drives by. I've never seen so many people get so angry by a piece of art that when they think that they're not being seen, have to throw things at it or just drive by and give it the middle finger. I'm like, are you like, to me, it's just so weird. I have videos, people just driving by, throwing Chick-fil-A at it, giving it the middle finger. I'm like, you are a grown man giving a piece of art the middle finger. Makes no sense. But that's
like the art cares.
But that's story from start to finish. That's where we were at today.
So the mural's still up. Some people are not happy about it. I hope that more people are happy about it than are not. It gives your daughter a peek behind the curtain that other people in society have to deal with.
Yeah.
So I just really applaud you. I know a lot of other people do. I think it's great that you did that. I think the lesson for your kids is just, there's no price you could put on that. Just good job, Dad, for supporting your daughter like that. Good job just, being a decent person.
Yeah.
And standing up for something like that. That's really just amazing. And I wish, again, more people were, could do that. And I just think it's great that people are at least standing behind you for it.
Yeah, that being said, it's really important because it gets lost in the ridiculousness of it all. For every terrible anonymous letter or every middle finger or every terrible slur they scream at us, for every one of those, there's 10 people who do show up and are like, this is amazing. We thank you for it. And that's why we keep doing it at the end of the day, because it sounds
awesome.
Because it can come across as a lot of negative, but there are more positives than negatives. So
that's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that too. And I'm glad you bring that up as well, because that is a good point.
Such an amazing story. So many great things can be done by great people when they're just willing to take the time to do it. What a great family. Thanks for checking this one out. Check out the other videos. Check us out on the Facebook page. go look at Sheldon Schaefersaurus on Facebook. Find the links for the TikTok. Just great things going on. We're so glad you could check this out and join us. Join us again next time right here on Y-TiSTiCS. I mean, hey, why not? Kids can sure show us the way, but it takes a real parent to let them lead. Hope you enjoyed this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Go check out the channel and see clips from this interview live. Like, share, subscribe, and make sure the message gets out on this one. Appreciate you guys joining us. Join us each and every week right here on Y-TiSTiCS. I mean, hey, why not?